Good morning. Today we're going to learn how to find coterminal angles by adding or subtracting 360. We always want the angles between 0 and 360, so if it is not between 0 and 360, we're going to add or subtract 360 until it is. So, why are we adding or subtracting 360? Well, I'm going to show you based on what we talked about yesterday. We said that this was 0, 90, 180, 270. So we said that this here is always where my angle starts. So if my angle starts here, that's 90, 180, 270, 360. So that's what we said yesterday, that this over here is 0 and 360, because if I go a full 360, I'm right back where I started. So let's do that with a different angle. Let's say I start at 90 and I do a full 360. If I start at 90 and I do a full 360, this angle here is 90 plus 360, which is 450. I could also go in the other direction. If I subtract 360, I'm also back where I started. So basically 360 is a full circle. So if I add 360 or I subtract 360, I'm right back where I started. That's what we call coterminal angles, because it's ending at the same spot. 0 and 360 are coterminal angles because they both terminate at the same point right there. So for each angle, state two angles that terminate at the same point. There's an infinite amount of answers. So I can do 120 plus 360. 480 will terminate at the same spot. I could do 120 minus 360. Negative 240. Those are two angles that are coterminal with 120 because they both terminate at the same spot. Now there's more. I could add another 360. If I add another 360, I get 840. That's another coterminal angle. Basically, 120 is right here, so that's 120. If from there I add 360, that's 480. If from there I add another 360, that's 840. And if I go the other direction, then I end up with my negative 240. Now it's getting a little sloppy, but hopefully you understand the point. If I add or subtract 360, I'm right back where I started. So even though I asked for two answers, I gave you three for that first one. Number two, 250 plus 360 is 610. 610 is coterminal to 250. I can do 250 minus 360, and that's negative 110. Again, there's more than two answers for each. There's an infinite amount of answers. I can just keep on adding or subtracting 360 to find coterminal angles. Let's skip ahead. Sketch the following angles and find the reference angle. So this kind of combines it with what we did yesterday. Again, in order to sketch it, I need it to be between 0 and 360 because my grid is between 0 and 360. So if it's not between 0 and 360, we're going to add or subtract 360 until it is. So negative 200 is too small, so I'm going to add 360. So 160 is coterminal with negative 200, which means that 160 is in the same spot as negative 200. Now, the reference angle we talked about yesterday, the reference angle is the acute angle between the x-axis and the angle. If this is 180 and this is 160, then that reference angle is 20 degrees. So again, to sketch an angle on the grid, it needs to be between 0 and 360. If it's not, then we're going to add or subtract 360 until it is. In this case, we had to add 360 to get it between 0 and 360. That gave me 160, and from there, it's the same thing we did yesterday. I sketched on the grid, it's between 90 and 180. It's closer to 180. That's where it goes, and my reference angle is always the angle in between there. Technically, because it asked for negative 200, let's put a negative 200 up here. The angle. 375, is 375 between 0 and 360? No. So I have to add or subtract 360 until it is. In this case, I'm going to subtract 360 since it's bigger than 360. I get 15 degrees. 0, 90, 180, 270, 360. It's between 0 and 90. So I'm actually going to write 375 here as well. Since that's what's asking, the reference angle is the angle between the angle on the x-axis. This is 0, this is 15. 15 minus 0 is 15. When you're in quadrant 1, the angle is the reference angle. Let's just do one more. How about 15? 0, 90, 180, 270, 360. 701, in order to sketch it, it needs to be between 0 and 360. It's not, so I have to subtract 360. That's going to be 341. Is 341 between 0 and 360? Yes. It's between 270 and 360. So I'm going to write 701, or I can write 341, whatever. The reference angle is always the angle in between the x-axis and the angle. This is 360, this is 341. 360 minus 341 is 19. That's my reference angle. What else do I got for you here? Let's take a look at number 16. 790, is 790 between 0 and 360? No. So I'm going to subtract 360 since it's too big. That gives me 430. Is that between 0 and 360? No. So from that, I'm going to subtract another 360. It's not that I'm always subtracting just one or just adding one 360. I'm going to keep on adding or subtracting 360 as many times as I need to until it's between 0 and 360. That gives me 70. So I can write 70, I can write 790. The reference angle is the angle between the x-axis and the angle itself. This is 0, this is 70. So the reference angle is 70. And that's it. Let's take a look at this example here. This was a Regents question. I'll give you about a minute or so to try it on your own. Again, remember the angle, in order to sketch it on the grid, the angle needs to be between 0 and 360. I'll give you about 45 seconds. Okay, so the angle is not between 0 and 360. So if it's not between 0 and 360, I have to find a coterminal angle. To do that, I'm going to add or subtract 360 until it is between 0 and 360. Since negative 50 is too small, I have to add 360. So 310 would be 0, 90, 180, 270, 360. 310 would be in quadrant 4. That's not in quadrant 4. That's not in quadrant 4. That's not in quadrant 4. This one is. And because it's negative 50, it's going the negative way. That's why it ends up there. That's your answer. So we always want our angle to be between 0 and 360. If it's not between 0 and 360, we're going to add or subtract 360 until it is. And if you just want to find a coterminal angle, again, you can always just add or subtract 360. And that's it. A relatively simple lesson. I'm going to record one more for you now for today, And then tomorrow we're putting everything together from the first 3 lessons.